Hello everyone. In this video we are going to continue our discussion about plants, and more specifically we are going to focus on angiosperms. So as you remember, we started with non-vascular plants or bryophytes. We moved on to the seedless vascular plants and then the gymnosperms, and now we are discussing the angiosperms. So angiosperms are characterized by three F's. So flower, having a flower, having a fruit, and having the fertilization. So three F's characterize the group of angiosperms. And we are going to go through these F's, or through these three characteristics, in more details in the coming slides. So moving on to the first one, flowers. So flower is a specialized shoot with up to 4 types of modified leaves. So if you can see this representative image of a flower, we can see that we have 4 types of modified leaves. The first one is the sepals. So these sepals, which are the one that enclose the flower before the flower open up, it was enclosed in this sepal. So these are the first type of modified leaves. Then we have the petals, and these are the colorful leaves that aim to attract the pollinators. Then we have the male structures and the female structures. So the male structure, we call them stamens. One way to remember that is, remember that stamen is ending with the part men. So that reminds you that this is the male structure. So stamen is composed of 2 parts, the anther and the filament. So the anther is the top part in which the pollen grains are produced. This anther is attached to the rest of the flower using the filament. So the anther is attached to the flower with the filament. Both the anther and the filament, they compose the stamen, which is the male structure. Then we have the carpels. So the carpels is the female structure. It is composed of 3 parts, the stigma, the style, and the ovary. So the 3 structures collectively, they are called carpel. So the stigma is the part that receives the pollen grain. So the pollen grain will fall here on the stigma. So it is the part in which the pollen grains are going to be deposited. Then the style is this tube connecting the stigma with the ovary. Then finally we have the ovary, where we have the ovules. So if you can see here, these are individual ovules. They are contained in an organ called ovary. So the ovary contains the ovules, or produces the ovules, and also it is the site, the ultimate site for fertilization. So the stamen will fall here on the stigma. Then they will move on through the style, and they will reach the ovary, where fertilization will occur. One thing I want to highlight here before we move on from the flowers is that in this flower we can see that both male and female organs are contained within the same flower. This is not always the case. Some other flowers, they are separate. So one flower carrying the male organs, another flower carrying the female organs. So even in flowers like this, where both male and female organs are contained within the same flower, the flower is trying to encourage cross fertilization, meaning that it is preferred for stamen to fertilize another flower, and that is to create the gene diversity. So there are many mechanisms or ways that encourage cross fertilization rather than self fertilization. So for example, the stamen will produce the pollen at different time than the time through which the stigma and ovary are ready to receive the pollens. So even if the stamen produce the pollen and they land on the stigma in the same flower, nothing is going to happen because the stigma and the ovary are not ready now to receive the pollen. So having them ready to produce the stamen or to receive to produce the pollen or to receive the pollen at different times is one way to encourage cross-fertilization. Another way is by having them at different levels. So as you can see here in this figure, the stamens are in a slightly lower level than the stigma, and that is also encouraging pollinators that it will not happen accidentally that pollinator will pick the pollen and deposit it in the stigma in the same flower. So there are different ways to encourage cross-fertilization. So moving on to the next F, we have the fruits. So a fruit typically consists of a mature ovary, but it can also include other parts of the flower, and the function of the fruit is to protect the seeds and aid in their dispersal. So any part of the plant that contains the seed is going to be considered as a fruit. For example, tomato is a fruit, cucumbers, they are also fruit, and all these different types are fruit. The types shown here in this figure are all fruits. They can be classified as dry fruits or fleshy fruits, and they are structures. They are rich in carbohydrates and nutrients, so they will attract animals, and they are going to eat these fruits, and then they move on. As you know, the animals move on, so they are going to disperse the seeds in another location. So fruits are actually helping the dispersal of the angiosperm, and we have already discussed that angiosperms are the most abundant type of plants, and they are the most successful colonizer of land, and one reason is attributed to the fact of having fruits. So continuing on the topic of fruits, there are various adaptations that help the dispersal of seeds. And for example, if we see this type of fruit, this is the type that usually come in our mind. So as we said, fruits are fleshy, tasteful, sugar containing, so they attract the animals to eat them, and once they eat them and they are moving, so they can disperse the seeds in other locations. So this is one way or one adaptations for dispersal of the seed, but also there are other ways, for example, to be dispersed by wings. So this fruit is going to so as you can see, the adaptation is in the shape which allows it to be light enough in order to be carried with the winds. So this one is going to be wind dispersed, and also some other adaptations are shown here. So if you go hiking with your dog, many cases it will come back with these structures sticking on the fur of the dog. So the dog will scratch this out, and what happened now, actually being sticky like that, is another way to attach to the fur of animals and get dispersed to another locations. So there are many adaptations, but the main goal is helping in the dispersal of the seeds.